They took gambling from the high street and put it in our hands. Now, betting on phones, tablets and computers is bigger than ever, and growing. Well-established companies like William Hill and Ladbrokes, who provide their service to UK customers on these devices, have one big advantage: they don't pay tax. This is because the 2005 Gambling Act established whitelisted zones. Betting companies could set up shop in these jurisdictions of Gibraltar, the Isle of Man and Guernsey, and from here they could supply their games to British people without paying tax to the Treasury.
There's a feeling that over the last 8 years, we as a country have become too liberal with our gambling laws, and the government wants to fix this. Through the Gambling, Licensing and Advertising Bill, they want to regulate these companies on a point of consumption and abolish whitelisted zones, meaning any company based outside the UK will have to apply for a licence with a gambling commission, and the Treasury want these companies to start paying tax.
Once these rules are in place, complying companies will be able to supply online gambling to Britain from anywhere in the world, which is why former DCMS Minister John Penrose believes that regulation and an emphasis on consumer protection is vital.
I was really just thinking about me or anybody else as a punter. If I walk into my local bookies, I want to make sure, I want to know that I'm safe. And I was acutely aware as gambling minister that I couldn't make that pledge to somebody going to play the same game online on their laptop or on their iPad in their own living room. And that, politically speaking, is a bomb waiting to go off. The Treasury may decide subsequently that it wants to do the taxation piece following on from the regulation piece, but you can't do the taxation without the regulation. You've got to have the regulation in place first.
George Osborne said in last year's budget statement that by December 2014, he'll tax remote gambling companies on point of consumption too. No matter where they're based, if they make money from British people, they'll have to pay British tax. The rate hasn't yet been decided, but experts believe it will be around 15%. The remote gambling market is growing rapidly, and there is a lot of money the government can make from this move. In 2009, British people gambled £1.3 billion on their phones, tablets and computers. This grew to £1.5 billion in 2010, £1.7 billion in 2011, and last year we broke through the £2 billion barrier. Industry expert Gambling Data predict that this rise will continue, estimating that remote gambling will take in £2.2 billion in 2013 and £2.5 billion in 2014. Going on the widely accepted 15% tax, the government would have made nearly £2 billion in the last 5 years alone. 2015 is the first year the tax will fully be in place. Although growth will be slow, betting companies will still make around £2.7 billion, and £380 million of this will go to the Treasury. This is where the government face serious opposition. Betting companies have gotten very used to their tax-exempt status and believe that they are being taxed to raise revenue rather than to protect online gamblers. In the pre-legislative scrutiny of the gambling bill, major betting firms were unanimous in their criticism of it. Paddy Power expressed serious concern that the tax was the government's primary focus. Bwin believed that the bill, which seeks to improve consumer protection, could have the opposite effect. Betfair believed that Britain would be opening itself up to the global market without the manpower to license it effectively. And William Hill said the ill-conceived regulation would hinder competitiveness in the market. This could simply be defiance from an industry that has gotten very used to its tax-exempt status and could find it difficult to operate under the new tax rules. But what is more critical, according to industry expert Gambling Compliance, is that the governmental moves could be unlawful.
The operators say that the government is only trying to do this for tax reasons and not for player protection like they're saying. That's actually against EU law, and the operators can actually take this to the European Commission. I remember I went to one of the parliamentary hearings and they actually compare them to companies like Starbucks and Amazon who are not paying tax here, and that was a massive deal.
In these financially difficult times, the government potentially has the power to make money from nothing. so politically the move has cross-party support. In fact, the Labour Party believe that the tax should be implemented sooner than 2014. Shadow Treasury Minister Catherine McKinnell told Newsnight,
"The offshore gambling industry is making massive profits from tax-paying punters in the UK, but at the same time it seems that between 250 million and 300 million is being avoided in tax each year. The government should be making every possible effort to clamp down on aggressive tax avoidance, and loopholes such as this should be closed as quickly as possible, not leaving it until next year."
The accusation of tax avoidance is refuted by industry regulators, the Remote Gambling Association, who disagree with the point of consumption tax. Their job is to act as a union for the remote gambling operators, and their membership include betting giants Bet365 and Paddy Power.
Okay, the first thing is it might affect the viability of the companies, and more so if your main part of your market is UK consumers. The second one is the general point about legality, and it doesn't feel right that you're trying to tax companies who are physically based in other countries to the extent actually they may not have a single piece of equipment or a single job in the UK. And we think that's a fairly strange approach. We've had all these things about Starbucks and companies avoiding tax. Well, we say we're in a different position because we're not taking bets on the high street and then finding some way not to pay tax on it by filtering the money offshore. This is actually offshore to start with. This is more like a holidaymaker going to Spain and then us trying to tax the hotel in Spain where they're staying.
The betting industry in the UK is already well regulated by the likes of the Gambling Commission and charitable organisations such as GamCare, so the government faces a difficult task in proving their priority is consumer protection, when regulation is already at a very high standard.
I think, in this country, that the gambling industry, whether it's the betting, gaming industry, casino industry, online industry, they're actually very well regulated here. They have to be. In terms of other places around the world, they're one of the best regulated.
Other governments, such as those in New Zealand and Singapore, face similar problems in opening their markets up to the world, but found a noble solution that the UK government is yet to announce.
What they argued quite rightly and understandably was in Singapore is that unless they open up the gambling opportunities, then people are going to go elsewhere, so they will lose out. So they opened up to major casinos a few years ago and slightly expanded other forms of gambling. What they argued was, yes, we want to bring in gambling because it's economic and it makes sense. And I guess that's what's in George Osborne's mind. I don't know. Okay. Secondly, however, there's going to be a number of people who are going to get into difficulties, and we don't want that in Singapore. So we're going to set up treatment programs, we're going to have publicity programs, and we're going to have international experts to advise us.
Mm-hmm. With £5 million of annual funding for problem gambling help coming directly from the industry every year, betting firms and campaign groups have argued that a sudden global betting boom could disrupt what is a finely balanced system.
But there's no measure of what the social and economic impact of gambling is. I think, to be honest, if you look at results that have been carried out in Australia, there was a recent report for the Victoria State in Australia that estimated the cost of problem gambling on a social economic basis is about £250 per capita. If you apply that over here, that's quite a substantial amount of money. It's in the billions. So the argument that they contribute £3.2 billion to the economy is probably negated by the fact we're not measuring what the social and economic impact is.
In this finely poised poker game, the Treasury has a lot to gain and the betting firms have a lot to lose. As the face-off continues, perhaps it is only the EU that can end it by dealing one of them a lucky hand.